On a quiet street with neat lawns, one porch light stayed on past 10. That was the minute the other trick-or-treaters came, the ones who do not go home. Welcome to the Black Hour Stories. Tonight begins a set of 5 true Halloween night hauntings. First up is the rule most neighbors never break. Porch lights off at 10. One house forgot. What waited outside was not after candy. It was after whoever kept the door open. He moved in 2 weeks before Halloween, still living out of boxes, still learning the names of the streets. The cul-de-sac looked friendly in the day. Neighbors waved from rakes. A thin line of maples stood red and gold, leaves sticking to the blacktop like wet paper coins. Everyone talked about the rule in the same careful tone. Lights off at 10, curtains closed, no late knocks. He nodded along and laughed inside, because rules like that felt like small-town theater, a way to pass stories down and keep kids in bed. On Halloween he worked late, then rushed home with a bag of mixed candy. He kept the porch bulb on to be kind. He liked the warm circle it made on the steps, the safe glow, the way it turned the cold air to honey. Kids came and went, masks squeaking, plastic bags whispering. He heard leaves crunch and the soft clink of costume beads. By 9:50, the flow slowed. By 10, the street fell quiet. He stood inside with the door cracked, watching the last few families trail away. He held the bowl, felt the weight lighten, smelled chocolate and cheap dye on his skin. At 10:01, a light wind shifted through the maples. He noticed because the air changed smell like damp smoke far off. The porch bulb hummed a little, brighter than before, and the glass went hot to the touch. He set the bowl on a box and rubbed his fingers. When he looked back through the cracked door, a second line of trick-or-treaters had formed at the bottom step. 5 small figures, still as photographs, each holding a sack that looked like flour bags from an old kitchen. Their costumes were neat but wrong, like a school play from a slower decade. A cowboy with a cardboard star, a witch with a felt hat too stiff, a nurse with bright white stockings and shoes older than the neighborhood. The last was a boy in a paper mask, eye holes too wide, the edges browned from breath. He felt relief first. More kids, a chance to give out the last handfuls. He opened the door wide. The smell of damp smoke grew stronger. It slid along the hallway floor like fog you only saw out of the corner of your eye. He held out the bowl. Each child lifted the mouth of their sack, and the dark inside looked deeper than any bag should. He dropped 3 mini bars into the nurse's sack. The candy fell with soft clicks, then no sound at all. It did not land. He told himself they were cushioned against other pieces, but the bowl was almost empty. He tried again with the cowboy. The bars fell and kept falling, as if a stairwell yawned in there, as if the bag belonged to some bottom that did not live in his world. The boy in the paper mask tapped his wrist where a watch should be. The cardboard star on the cowboy's chest ticked once, like something cooling. Behind the 5, shapes gathered in the street. He saw them between the thin trunks of the maples. Tall and narrow, their edges wavered like heat above a grill. Their eyes were bright round points, the same color as his porch bulb. He backed up and shut the door to a hand's width. The bulb hummed harder. An old smell rose from the ceiling, tar and attic dust, sun-baked shingles, hot rope. He reached up to twist the porch light off at last, but the glass scalded his palm. He let go with a hiss and felt silly for the small pain. He could grab a glove. He dug in a box near the hallway for winter stuff, mittens, a scarf. Beneath them lay a single heavy glove he didn't recognize, dark and sticky to the touch, as if soaked in something long dried. When he slid his hand inside, it fit better than his own skin. He opened the door to the width of his shoulder and tried the bulb again. The glove took the heat. The glass turned under his fingers and didn't move. The fixture resisted like a locked jar. The boy in the paper mask tilted his head in a smooth, bird-like motion. The nurse's sack sagged a little toward his house, as if pulled by a breath from his hallway. He thought of the neighbors and their calm faces, the way they spoke like people who owed something and paid it each year. A boundary street, they had said. A door you keep closed after 10. People keep lights for people. Other things use whatever people build. The tall shapes slid closer. Their eyes burned like bright beads. He could not see feet or hands, only height and a waver, as if the air had been hung on sticks and lit from inside by a bulb. His breath fogged the glass storm door. The porch stepped light to heavy like weight tested one plank at a time. He pictured the houses around him like islands. Each had a porch, each had a bulb. He understood then that the rule was not about one light, but all of them. It was a circuit. One open door on a boundary was nothing. Many open doors were a street. The glove in his hand felt heavier, and he knew this glove had made this circuit before. He knew someone had walked lawn to lawn one Halloween, turning off what would not turn itself, and that person had not come back to pick up the glove. He stepped out and shut the door behind him. The night carried a thin ash taste. Leaves stuck to his shoes like tongues. The 5 small figures watched, but they did not climb the steps. They opened their sacks wider, mouths of canvas stretching farther than seams should stretch. The tall shapes paused at the curb, heads cocked toward his bulb, then toward the next. He ran to his neighbor's porch. The bulb there burned steady, though he could swear he had seen it wink out at 10. He twisted it with the glove. It turned without heat. The glass whispered under his palm like breath on a bottle. The yard light far down the street blinked out as if answering. He moved to the next, heart pounding, counting steps, counting bulbs. Each turn felt like shutting a lid on a small, hot mouth. The air cooled just a little each time. Behind him, the 5 small figures turned in unison to face whichever house he was at. Their sacks stayed open. The boy in the paper mask would tap his wrist, once for each minute past 10, and the tap would echo in the wood underfoot. From the street, the tall shapes drifted along the curb, their bright eyes moving like porch lights carried by people he could not remember. At the 8th house, a string of small white bulbs wrapped a porch rail, hung by a kind neighbor who meant well. He crushed each one with the glove, glass popping like dry knuckles. The tiny lights died in a row. The tall shapes stopped and seemed to thin. The ash taste pulled back. He kept moving. He thought of his baby asleep in the back room, a cheap whale nightlight glowing blue above the crib. He thought of the hallway lamp he sometimes forgot. He thought of the switch by the window that stuck and sometimes flickered on if you slammed the bedroom door. The glove had weight like a duty. He counted and tried to keep his mind flat and blank, so no thought would call anything by accident. At the last house, the porch bulb was already dark. He felt brief relief, then noticed a soft glow upstairs behind a thin shade, a small circle of light like a coin. He knew that window. It matched his house. He had never put a bulb there. He had not unpacked a lamp for that room. He ran, glove held to his chest, wind cold enough to burn his teeth. The 5 small figures stood now at his bottom step, lined up again, sacks open, cloth-like mouths held by patient hands. The hum from his porch had grown into a low note that vibrated his bones. The tall shapes leaned inward, drawn by that note, not quite stepping into the yard, as if the grass itself had rules they could not break. He pushed through them, moved up the steps, and set his shoulder to the door. It gave like skin, not wood. The hallway smelled of tar, attic dust, and old rope. The glove stuck to the knob, then freed. He went to the back room. The small blue whale nightlight glowed harmless, but the overhead ceiling bulb burned bright white on its own. He had not turned it on. The pull chain lay stiff and straight, tugged by nothing. He reached up. The glove met the glass. Heat buzzed against his palm. He turned. The bulb held. He tried again, harder, and felt the glass give a fraction. From the hall, the ash smell darkened. He imagined the tall shapes lifting their heads. He thought of the boundary and the way doors work both ways. He twisted harder. The bulb turned at last. It clicked, went dark, then kept turning loose in its socket like a thing without threads. The hum in the house sank. The blue whale's glow looked honest again, small and gentle. The ash smell thinned until the room held only baby powder and paint. He stood there with his hand up, breathing fast, gloves sticky, skin sweating under it. He went back to the front door. The porch stood empty. The walkway lay clean except for a few leaves shaped like hands. The street looked normal, a little fog on the edges, a car far off. He peeled the glove and set it on the hall table. His palm underneath was white and wrinkled from sweat. For 3 days the house stayed calm. The baby slept well. The porch bulb cooled and dimmed. He told himself he had been caught up in the story the neighbors told and had acted it out like a play. On the 4th day, while making coffee, he looked up at the ceiling bulb in the back room. It was off. Inside the glass something moved, slow as a fish in a jar. Not dust, not a bug. A soft, swirling dark, flecked with specks like embers, turning and turning on its own, as if the bulb remembered heat and would never let go. That was porch lights off at 10, and the rule is simple now: lights out, doors closed, hearts quiet. Some streets are more than streets on Halloween night. If you've ever lived where the rules were not written but everyone knew them, tell us where you're listening from in the comments. If this story stole your breath for a moment, tap like and subscribe to join us for the next haunting in this Halloween series. A woman needed a last-minute Halloween costume. The thrift store had one left, sealed in a dry cleaning bag labeled "Return by Dawn." Welcome to the Black Hour Stories. Tonight's tale is the second in our Halloween series, a story about a borrowed costume that never really left its first owner. Some clothes hold warmth, others hold memory. This one held something that still wanted its curtain call. The store was closing early for Halloween, lights already dimmed to half. A few decorations hung lazy in the window, a paper bat with one wing torn, a jack-o'-lantern grin cut from faded cardboard. At the back near the coats, a single garment bag leaned against the wall. The tag tied to the zipper said, "Return by dawn." Maya was late to a party and desperate. She'd tried 2 other stores, everything good was gone. The clerk at the counter looked up once, opened his mouth like to warn her, then just sighed. She offered a 20, got no change, and hurried out with the bag. The plastic smelled of smoke and something sweet underneath, like wilted carnations. In her apartment, she unzipped it. Inside hung a clown suit made of heavy fabric stitched with red X's across the seams, a cracked porcelain mask with painted tears, and old shoes whose soles breathed air instead of squeaking. She told herself it was cool in a creepy way, vintage. But when she looked closely, the inside tag had no size or brand, just a name written in black thread: Pierrot's Return. The suit slid over her skin like water. It fit too well. The mask strap was stiff, the porcelain faintly warm, as if it had been worn moments ago. When she turned to the mirror, her reflection looked delayed by a blink. Out on the street, kids still wandered, shouting through the early dark. She walked toward the party a few blocks away. Streetlights blinked out one by one behind her. The smell of burnt leaves followed. Children stopped their candy runs to stare. One small boy in a skeleton mask tugged his mother's sleeve and whispered. The clown came back. At the party, the music died the second she stepped through the door. A few guests laughed nervously. Someone joked that her costume looked too real. She tried to laugh, but the mask wouldn't let her cheeks move. She danced a little to ease the mood, but each step made the old shoes breathe out with a soft sigh, as if something inside them exhaled. Near midnight, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're late for the show. Gym doors are open." The address was the old elementary school across town, the one that burned decades ago and never reopened. She stared, pulse thudding. A prank, she thought. Someone must have seen her costume and wanted to mess with her. But her feet had other plans. The shoes turned her body without her help. The laughter from the party dulled behind her, swallowed by the night. The gym doors were open when she arrived. The lock hung melted, metal fused like wax. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of paper and mildew. Folding chairs faced a small stage where a paper banner sagged, "Halloween program. Do not start late." A single spotlight snapped on, blue and weak. Programs lay on every chair. She picked one up. Each page listed acts by children, their names blurred by heat marks. At the bottom, someone had scrawled in pencil, "Show must go on, no matter who wears the suit." A soft clapping began behind her. She turned. Rows of children sat in the chairs, skin grey pale, eyes glossy. Their hands clapped in perfect rhythm, each sound a dry slap of paper. The costume pulled at her joints. The shoes walked her forward. On stage, she began to perform, though she didn't know how. The suit did. It made her bow spin, juggle invisible props. The crowd giggled, a thin, echoing sound like air escaping a balloon. Each move she made burned her muscles, but the laughter made the air grow warmer, the shadows redder. Then the program called for the final act. Volunteers trick. A voice from the crowd said, "I'll go." It was the thrift store clerk. He walked up the aisle, older than she'd first thought, eyes wet. In his trembling hand, he held another garment bag. "You brought it back," he whispered. "Maybe now I can leave." The stage lights flickered. The mask on her face grew hot enough to burn. She tried to speak, but only a wheeze came out. The clerk stepped beside her and opened his bag. Inside was another Pierrot suit, torn, blood-stained, half-burned. He looked at the crowd. "We left before the last bow," he said. "They never got their applause." The ghostly audience stood as one, their mouths opening but no sound came, only the smell of smoke and melted glue. The clerk handed her a set of white gloves. "One last trick," he said. "Make them disappear." The gloves clung to her fingers. She lifted her hands without meaning to. When she snapped her fingers, the blue light burst into 100 sparks. The children flickered and vanished, replaced by rows of empty chairs. The stage curtain fell in slow motion, dust floating like ash. When she came to, dawn was bleeding pale light through the gym windows. The clerk was gone. The costume hung loosely now, colder than ice. She stripped it off and stuffed it back into the dry cleaning bag. The label still read, "Return by dawn." She dropped it at the thrift store door and walked home barefoot. That afternoon, she noticed red X's blooming under the skin along her arms, as if stitched from the inside. She ran to the mirror. The marks formed the same pattern as the clown suit's seams. Her phone buzzed again. This time the message read, "Received. See you next Halloween. Don't forget to bring the next one." When she looked down, the bag she'd left at the store sat neatly by her front door. Inside was the suit, clean, pressed and warm. That was the borrowed costume. Some things don't want to be thrown away, they want to be worn again. If you ever find a label that says, "Return by dawn," maybe leave it sealed. Tell us where you're listening from in the comments. And if you're brave enough to hear the next haunting, like and subscribe to the Black Hour Stories. A rideshare driver turned on his radio to stay awake. The station that answered back wasn't on any frequency map, but it knew his name, his car, and every road he'd ever taken. Welcome back to the Black Hour Stories. Tonight's ride takes a detour into something that never shows up on GPS, a frequency only drivers hear on Halloween night. The ones who tune in call it Station 1031. Few remember what plays after the static ends. Evan drove nights for extra cash. Halloween was easy money. Bar hoppers, costumes, too much candy and beer. Around midnight, his car smelled like fog machine and cheap perfume. He kept the radio low, a talk station murmuring about local curfews. At 1:13 a.m., the dial slid on its own, a scratch of static, then a voice came through, calm, too close, as if the speaker sat in his back seat. "Good evening, drivers. You're tuned to 1031, the station that keeps you company between here and the next place." He frowned and checked the frequency, 103.1, though that channel was usually dead air. A soft hum underscored the voice, deep enough to feel through the steering wheel. The host chuckled. "We're taking call-ins tonight. Tell us who you left behind on the road." He laughed nervously and switched stations. The dial snapped back. "Evan," the voice said, "you still with us?" His fingers froze. He hadn't given his name. The rideshare app on his phone buzzed. New pickup request, 5 minutes away. No address, just a pin dropped near the old bypass. The rider's note read, "Thanks for listening to 1031. Don't be late." Evan cursed but accepted the fare. The night outside looked fine, a little fog, empty streets. The radio stayed quiet until he turned off the main road. Then the hum rose again, and callers began to speak between static bursts. Each voice told a short story. A crash on a bridge, a woman hit while changing a tire, a boy who disappeared near mile marker 8. Every story ended the same way. He left them behind. The pickup point was a bus stop with no sign, just a cracked bench and wet leaves piled against the curb. A woman stood there in a silver dress soaked through, hair plastered to her cheeks. She smiled when he rolled down the window. "Station sent you?" she asked. Her voice was faint, as if it traveled from far away. He hesitated, then unlocked the door. She climbed in without a word, shivering though the air wasn't cold. Her destination, the old drive-in, a place shut down 20 years ago. The car felt heavier with her inside, the windows fogged in thin, slow circles, as though someone outside breathed on the glass. The radio whispered under the engine noise. "Caller 2, said the host. "Tonight's passenger has been waiting for her ride since 97. Evan gripped the wheel tighter. "This is some prank," he muttered. The woman turned toward him. "Do you remember the gate you hit?" He blinked. There had been a gate. One Halloween night long ago, he and friends had been drunk driving near that very field. A girl had run across the road, or maybe it was a reflection, a trick of the lights. The memory blurred. The radio crackled again. "Don't fight the route, Evan. The road knows you." Street signs changed as he passed. Black letters smeared, names melting into numbers. Each one matched the crash stories from the callers. He looked at his phone for directions. The screen glowed blank white, except for a small red line drawing itself ahead of him, looping through nowhere. At 2:06 a.m., the woman in silver spoke for the first time since. "He promised to take me home," she whispered, "but he left me in the fog." He slammed the brakes. The car stopped in the middle of a field that shouldn't exist. No drive-in screen, just rows of old cars half buried in grass. Their headlights glowed dim orange, engines silent. Frost covered every windshield. The host spoke again, voice trembling with excitement. "Welcome to our lot, listeners. Here every driver gets a second chance. All he has to do is open the trunk." The trunk light flicked on by itself. He could see it glowing in the rearview mirror. The hum in the radio deepened until it felt like a heartbeat under the car. He got out. The field smelled of oil and wet dirt. He opened the trunk. Inside lay his spare tire, and all 5 seatbelts stretched out like grey tongues, twitching. The woman appeared behind him. "If you drive us tonight," she said, "you can undo it. No one has to remember." Her eyes reflected the dashlights, bright and empty. Evan stepped back. "You're not real." The hum rose to a shriek. The radio inside his car burst with voices, dozens layered over one another, every caller speaking at once, saying his full name, his address, and then a final line. He left them behind. The headlights of the buried cars flared. Silhouettes sat in the driver's seats, motionless. When he looked closer, they were grinning wide and wrong, mouths full of dark. He ran back to his own car. The woman sat in the back seat now, dripping water onto the floor mats. The radio whispered softly, "Choice time, driver. Keep the engine running, or shut it off and listen to us forever." He turned the key. The car died. The hum vanished. When he looked up again, the passenger seat was empty. The field stretched quiet around him. No cars, no fog, just still air. His phone restarted, the map blinking back to life, showing a straight road home. He drove in silence, but as the sky lightened toward dawn, he noticed water seeping from the seams of the back seat. He turned the radio off, but it kept faintly glowing. A man's voice, barely a whisper, said, "Tank's full. Same time next year." He sold the car a month later. The new owner sent him a text the following Halloween. "Radio turns on by itself. Keep saying my name." "Should I change the frequency?" Evan never replied. He didn't own a car anymore. He took the bus now, and every time the driver's radio fuzzed, he looked away. That was station 1031. Some roads don't end. They loop back until someone finally pays their fare. If you've ever heard static that seemed to breathe your name, tell us where you're listening from in the comments. And keep the lights on, or better yet, keep them off. And subscribe for the next story from the Black Hour Stories. Every Halloween, the corner grocery left out a glass bowl of free candy. But the wrappers weren't normal. They came numbered, and the numbers never stopped counting. Welcome to the Black Hour Stories. Our fourth Halloween tale takes place in a small town that never skips trick-or-treat night, no matter the weather, no matter who goes missing. At the center of it all sits one old candy bowl, filled fresh every year, waiting for anyone greedy enough to take more than one. The grocery store sat at the only four-way stop in town. Its lights stayed on through every storm. Even the year lightning struck the steeple across the street. Every Halloween, the owner, Mr. Delaney, set a heavy glass bowl on the counter right by the register. A handwritten sign above it read, "Take one, count carefully." Nobody remembered when the tradition started, only that it was older than Delaney himself. The candy inside looked ordinary, foil-wrapped caramels, orange taffies, peanut chews, but the wrappers felt odd, smooth outside, waxy inside, as if lined with candle grease. The town kid said if you took more than one, you'd start seeing your number everywhere before sunrise. Of course, rules like that exist, so someone will break them. That year, 5 teenagers did. They were the kind who thought everything spooky was fake until proven otherwise. They stopped by the store before their party, laughing, pockets full of dollar bills for soda and chips. The youngest, Troy, was dared to grab a handful. He scooped up 7 pieces and winked at the others. "Count carefully," the cashier said softly without looking up. Troy snorted and paid for a soda. The bowl trembled slightly when he walked away, but he didn't notice. Outside, the air smelled like wet hay and cold rain. The group tore open the candy under the streetlight. Each wrapper had a small brown number written inside, neat and old-fashioned, like from a fountain pen. Troy laughed until he saw the duplicate. The others teased him, saying it was just random ink. They tossed their wrappers into the gutter and walked on toward the edge of town, the sound of their boots crunching leaves. At first, the night stayed normal. Distant fireworks, porch lights winking off, the smell of wood smoke. Then the numbers started following them. The first appeared at the gas station, pump 8 flickering. Then the bus stop clock read 8:08 even though the bus was hours gone. By the time they reached the old water tower, Troy's phone battery was at 8%. He joked about it, but his voice trembled. The group noticed how quiet the town felt. Even the wind seemed to pause between breaths. They decided to walk back to the store, laughing too loudly to cover their nerves. When they passed the church, the marquee out front glowed with new letters. "Count again, 8 remain." Nobody spoke after that. At the store, the windows were dark, though the open sign still buzzed. Inside, the candy bowl sat empty. The glass was warm, fogged from the inside. Behind the counter, Mr. Delaney stood perfectly still. His eyes followed them, slow and ticking like a clock's second hand. "Too many sweets?" he asked. His voice was dry, papery. "We just, wanted to put them back," Troy said, holding out the empty wrappers. Mr. Delaney tilted his head. "You can't return what's already been counted." The lights flickered. On the wall behind him hung an old ledger, pages covered in columns of numbers. The ink shimmered like dried syrup. Each line ended with a name the teens didn't recognize, except the newest one, Troy Vance, 8. Mr. Delaney's smile widened until it didn't look human anymore. His jaw clicked with each word. Someone must balance the count before dawn. Troy dropped the wrappers. They fluttered to the floor but didn't land. They just kept falling, shrinking into the dark between the tiles. The others ran. Troy froze as the air turned heavy and sweet, thick with the smell of caramel cooking too long. He could feel something forming in his palm, a new piece of candy, wrapped tight, hot enough to burn. The waxy paper bore a fresh number. 7. His friends found him outside minutes later, standing under the flickering streetlight, eyes open, body stiff. The candy sat in his palm, unbitten. They tried to wake him. He was breathing but shallow, whispering under his breath, "Count again, count again." When the police came, Mr. Delaney was gone. The store was locked from the inside, lights out, shelves empty. The next day, the bowl was back on the counter, filled to the brim. The new sign said, "Take one, payment cleared." Troy never spoke again, but he kept one strange habit. Every Halloween after, he returned to the store at closing time, dropped a single wrapped candy in the bowl, and walked home. People said he counted the steps the whole way. If anyone interrupted, he started over. No one else ever dared to take more than one, but every few years, someone new moves to town, ignores the stories and laughs at the sign, and by morning another number joins the ledger. That was the candy that counts. Some debts come in coins, others in wrappers. If you ever see a candy bowl with numbers on the inside, don't test your luck. Take one and walk away. Tell us where you're listening from in the comments, and if you want more true Halloween hauntings, like and subscribe to the Black Hour Stories. When the elevator stopped between floors at midnight, she thought it was just a glitch. But the mirrored hallway she stepped into didn't belong to her building or her world. Welcome back to the Black Hour Stories. Our final Halloween haunting takes us high above the city to a new apartment tower that hides an old secret behind its mirrors. Some residents say you can still reach the 13th floor if you press the right buttons after midnight. The ones who tried never rode the elevator again. The Maple Crest Towers were barely 6 months old. Glass walls, marble lobby, an elevator that whispered its floors instead of dinging. No one living there believed in ghosts, except maybe the maintenance man. He was quiet, gray-haired, always humming something that sounded like a hymn. One October afternoon, while fixing a light near the mailboxes, he told the new tenant, Dana, "Never press 1-4 at the same time as close door after midnight. The car don't like that." She laughed. "There isn't even a 13th floor." He stopped humming. "That's what they want you to think." On Halloween night, The building threw a rooftop party. Dana almost didn't go, too tired, too cold, but the invitation had said midnight champagne, and her friends were already upstairs. She put on a white sheet ghost costume as a joke and took the elevator alone. The mirrored doors closed around her reflection. She could hear the faint echo of music from above, bass thumping through the cables. The floor panel glowed warm gold. Just before she pressed rooftop, the car jolted, soft like a breath. The panel blinked twice. The number 12 glowed, then 14, then back to 12. She frowned, sighed, and pressed close door and 1 together, hoping to reset it. The elevator shuddered once, then went still. All the lights died except one, the number 13, faint and pulsing red. "Okay," she muttered. "We're doing this." When the doors slid open, the hallway waiting for her was colder than it should have been. The carpet was the same pattern as her floor, but off somehow. The flowers were different shapes, mirrored backward. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and smoke. Along the wall stretched a long mirror, the kind she'd passed 100 times in the lobby. Except this one breathed. A thin fog pulsed behind the glass, like someone on the other side exhaling. Her reflection stood half a beat slower than she did. When she tilted her head, it followed, but late. A shiver ran down her arms. "Okay," she whispered. "It's a trick mirror." Then something moved behind her reflection, another figure under a white sheet a few steps back. She spun around. The hallway behind her was empty. When she looked again, the reflection figure was gone, but the mirror had grown cloudy, rippling slightly like water in a storm drain. Down the hall, fluorescent lights flickered in a slow rhythm. 3 flashes, paused, 3 flashes. At the end of the corridor, a janitor's cart stood by itself, one wheel squeaking in triplets. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A sign above the nearest door read, "Stair access." But the handle was cold metal that stung her palm like ice held too long. She pulled anyway. The door didn't budge. She turned toward the elevator, only to see her reflection still facing the door. Then it smiled she hadn't. A faint tapping started, soft knocks from inside the mirror, steady and slow. Each tap came from a different spot, like fingertips testing glass. Her reflection tilted its head, its grin too wide now, the sheet slipping off to reveal her own face rearranged, eyes where her mouth should be, mouth stretched where her throat ought to be. She stumbled back, slamming into the elevator button panel. Every button lit at once. The doors closed, but only halfway, sticking on something soft. A hand, her own, pale and backward, reaching through from the mirror side. Dana screamed and jammed the door close button, but the elevator refused to move. Her handprint smeared across the metal, not hers, left-handed. The mirror began to slide down the hallway wall, dragging light with it, leaving wet streaks that steamed in the cold air. Behind the glass walked more figures, all under sheets, faces white and blurry. Some carried broken cell phones that flashed like candles. Each had a plastic wristband, hospital red. One by one they turned their heads toward her, movements delayed but perfect. The lights dimmed. The elevator display blinked nonsense. 12, 12, 12, 12, 12. Dana pressed rooftop again. The doors closed at last. She dropped to her knees, gasping. The elevator rose, groaning like something underwater. When it opened, she was back in the lobby. Music drifted faintly from above, muffled and cheerful. The night guard waved. "Happy Halloween," he said. Her sheet costume still covered her face. She didn't speak. She walked straight to her apartment and locked the door. At sunrise, neighbors swore they saw her leave the building, still wearing the sheet, carrying a small mirror under her arm. She never came back. That night, the maintenance man cleaned the elevator. On the panel, every number worked fine except 13, which flickered softly no matter what he did. He covered it with black tape. A few days later, residents started complaining about strange noises, footsteps between the 12th and 14th floors, and faint knocks on their bathroom mirrors around 12:03 a.m. One tenant filmed it. Her reflection hesitated for a second before smiling back even after she'd stopped. In the video's playback, something could be seen walking behind her reflection. Someone draped in a white sheet, moving one heartbeat late. The management company replaced every mirror in the building. Still, tenants say on Halloween night, if you ride the elevator after midnight and the light flickers red, you'll feel the air turn colder, and somewhere down that missing hallway, you'll hear the faint rhythm of a janitor's cart. 123, 123. That was midnight behind the mirror. Some reflections don't copy you. They wait for their turn to walk out. If you've ever seen your mirror lag or felt watched while brushing your teeth at night, tell us where you're listening from in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true hauntings from the Black Hour stories.